Alrighty. Here we go. Thank you. Welcome. Session 24, Creditors in Commerce, Classroom Sessions at the Living Temple. Tonight, I'm going to call this one Paradigm Shift and talk about the communion of spirit and commerce and what and where it can lead and how we can truly become creditors and affect some kind of transformational change in the world, if that is our intention. Let's take a look at some of the things we've discussed over the last, what's it been now? 7 months? Or 7 months or more. We've talked about jurisdictions and things of that nature, and something that I want to address is maybe what we call jurisdiction, or what I call jurisdiction X. In algebra, or mathematics, X represents a variable. It has no assigned value until you've solved the equation. Now, we've talked about jurisdiction A and jurisdiction B. Those we've given a title to. We've called them the republic, the democracy, public and private. But the naming, the giving of a title, fictionalizes it. It fixes it in time. Only jurisdiction X, that jurisdiction which has no title, because it does not exist in a time space. We don't make reference to something that existed there. In Western religion, God has no name, or they never speak the name of God. It is an ineffable word. It is unspeakable. God's law is in the now. As soon as you try to fix it in time and space, you've fictionalized it. For instance, a lot of you may have the idea or identify me as Brandon. Brandon Adams, Brandon Alexander Adams, however you identify me, your idea or perception of me is based on the past. I don't care if this is your first time. It's based on me 10 seconds ago. If you've been here since January, it's based on your idea of me that's been created over the last 7 months. But everything is fictional. Everything is in the past. Your idea of what the person before you is now is based on fiction. In the past, not in the now. In the now, I have no title. If I wish to push myself or my transactions on a timeline, I need to create fictions. In order for there to be a future, in order for there to be a past, in order for my fiction to interact with your fiction and to conduct business, we put it on a timeline. We've now traversed from now time God law into our creation, man's law. Whether we call it jurisdiction A, jurisdiction B, we've fictionalized existence by basing everything on the past. By basing everything on the past, we must take a position on those things that have happened in the past. There are several people who may be in this room, who participate in the phone calls, participate on the Google group. They are a victim to me. Anyone in here feel like they're in the position they're in because of me? I've created something in your life, okay? There's a couple.
You've created something in all of our lives.
No, but you're basing it on that it was me that did it.
No.
You're, whatever, I'm not, what I'm saying is you could choose to be a victim to what's been shared here. By saying, Brandon said this, I did this, I'm in this situation because of him. No, I'm not saying it's true. I'm saying some people take that position. Okay? It's their choice. Like, I read on another forum, on another group, a person being a victim to me to the extent that not only was I a very bad person, but I also support, and he's basing this on what he's gotten from the classes, that I support the killing of people in Iraq. Okay, now I'm not saying this is truth. This is his experience, people. It's not wrong. It's not right. It's just his experience.
Delusional?
Aren't we all? We all make up our own experience of what's going on. And as soon as you place it in time, take a position on it, you're fictionalizing it. Okay? So the fact, we talk about knowing who you are. You, or I, only exist in the now. The past is fiction, the future is fiction. It doesn't exist. It never happens. Man's law, interestingly enough, is written in past tense, future tense. It's never valid in the now. I challenge anyone out there, find a law on the books that's written in present tense terminology that doesn't have any reference to past event or future event, and you won't find it because it's fiction. Now, if you choose to put your authority, what is authority? Anyone know what authority is? How has authority come to? How is it created? By what?
Someone submits to.
Submits to? Is it possible that authority only comes from agreement?
Most likely, yes.
Let's look at what we consider authority. Those who live under God's law, what is the authority?
God.
And who granted him that authority?
Us.
You did. Now, if you choose to live under God's law in the now, that is the authority that you conduct your life, or under which you conduct your life. It is a living law for living souls. Interestingly enough, would you consider, or is it possible that the only law that we are currently conducting ourselves on, if we're in the living law, is natural law? Those truths we hold that cannot be violated by virtue of the nature of existence itself and our experience. So let's look at what many have considered God's law, the Ten Commandments. What does the word commandment mean? An order, given under authority. Authority is achieved through agreement. Who granted the authority? You did. So, if the commandments are orders given under authority, what's an order? Imperative? Directive? Okay. What is to direct? To guide towards a goal through advice. Now, the Ten Commandments have a goal. What might that goal be? What is unique about the Ten Commandments that separates it from natural law? Well, it references multiple parties. Thou shalt not whatever. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's whatever. Right? So it's the law and the authority were created, and any order or directive given under authority, what is that? Is that an offer? It's a contract if you perform, or even if you don't perform. But if by your actions and conducts you indicate that you are living under the living law, you're in agreement. Okay? So, if there's a living law, and we've chosen, or we see it in our best interest to live in communities, and we want to feel safe in our communities. We want to be productive and abundant. Could it be that the Ten Commandments do that? Give us a basis from which we can operate and create a community which is functional. It's a guideline. Yeah, but we have to look to the higher authority. We have to believe in a higher authority by that agreement. Interesting thing, how many here have seen The Watchmen? Just a few? Okay. Great movie. In The Watchmen, the world is on the brink of complete destruction. It's all, the fit's about to hit the shan, okay? All-out nuclear war is what is minutes away, hours away in this movie between the United States and the USSR. This is actually, the movie's based on like an alternate reality, a parallel reality to ours, where Nixon actually had like 6 terms in the White House. Or 5 terms, something ridiculous. And there are these masked superheroes who run around, my favorite, one of them being Dr. Manhattan. And Dr. Manhattan has absolute power over the physical universe. He can instantly be on another planet. He can instantly be in 10 places at once, in thousands of places at once. He can dematerialize, bring matter apart, bring it together, create that which did not exist before he thought it into existence. He can teleport you from here to the other side of the room. He has what seems to be the power of God. And he's even equated to that in an interview where one of his colleagues says, God exists, and he's American. Okay? Now, his goal in this movie is to bring about world peace. But Dr. Manhattan started out in the role of a man. Before he became Dr. Manhattan, he was just your average run-of-the-mill man. And so his perspective still comes from the limitations of physical people, seeing things to have a linear basis. But his sense of time is a little different than everyone else's. He sees it as everything culminating in one point. That what we think is the past is always coming from the now. What we think is the future is always coming from the now. He even makes the comment, if you could see time the way that I do. Okay, so this person who has really infinite power, he's working with the smartest man in the world to create energy. Energy which does not require a fuel source. Perpetual energy is what they're working on, because it is their idea and vision that scarcity is the driving factor leading this world down the path of destruction. The idea of scarcity. So they look at it as, let's create abundance and we can transform the world. However, there are other superheroes running around with them. The comedian and whatnot. And the comedian looks at it as, man is savage. At one point in the movie, one of the other superheroes turns to the comedian and says, what happened to the American dream as these superheroes are walking through the streets, literally attacking Americans? And he looks back at his fellow superhero and says, what do you mean? It came true. Everyone has the power to do whatever they want, and look, complete destruction. They're destroying themselves because man by nature is savage. This is the comedian's point of view. Is it truth? No. It's just how he sees the world. And he's a parody of that. Very destructive in his nature. He's parodying what he sees in society. So the world's smartest man, being the world's smartest man, devises a scheme to create world peace. He knows in the back of his mind that even if he brings out this abundant energy source where scarcity does no longer exist, he knows man will still destroy itself. So the world's smartest man just dreams up this elaborate plan whereby he plays on the emotional strings of Dr. Manhattan to the point where Dr. Manhattan disappears from Earth. And he was the deterrent, supposedly, keeping the USSR from attacking America with all its nuclear warheads because, for all they knew, Dr. Manhattan could stop all of their missiles because of his power, what seemingly was limitless. In fact, in this movie, this alternate reality, the Vietnamese surrendered to Dr. Manhattan because he just grew to about 300 feet tall, started walking through the war fields, and within a week of the president asking him to intervene, within a week the war was over. Because of his unlimited power, he could just take out an entire battalion, the wave of his hand. And so the Vietnamese surrendered to Dr. Manhattan. So it created this alternate reality. So the arms race, the Americans, or people in America, were blaming it on the existence of Dr. Manhattan. They claimed that if there was no Dr. Manhattan, the Russians wouldn't be building up their nuclear arsenals. Now, we all lived through the 80s, or a lot of us did. Were we building up our nuclear arsenals without Dr. Manhattan? They found a scapegoat. They had someone to blame it on, as we always do in any situation. We don't like to take responsibility. We like to focus it out on someone else. It's this guy's fault. So this man who was like God, in this elaborate scheme that the world's smartest man created, when he got Dr. Manhattan to leave and to disappear, his plan went into motion, whereby I think something like 5 or 6 simultaneous explosions happened with the energy signature of Dr. Manhattan. It seemed to the world that Dr. Manhattan had just had it up to here and literally took out New York, Moscow, all like major cities of all the major world powers in an instant. Hong Kong, gone. Completely obliterated. And what happened? And the funny thing is, these superheroes figure out, because the whole time these other superheroes are going, okay, what's going on, what's going on? And they figure out near the end of the movie, the world's smartest man's behind it all. He's the bad guy. He's the one creating all these chain reaction of events where there's a series of people in the movie who get cancer and they blame that on Dr. Manhattan. And they start to put all the pieces together and they realize that it's the world's smartest man doing all this. So they go to confront him with his evil deeds. Okay? And when all these explosions happen simultaneously, their immediate reaction is, what are you doing? You're destroying the world. You're going to cause an end to the world. And what he created instead, through a lie, because Dr. Manhattan had nothing to do, and Dr. Manhattan actually returns to Earth to also confront the world's smartest man, because even in his infinite wisdom, was not able to see through what it was the world's smartest man had created. And in one of the culminating moments of the movie, where Dr. Manhattan's about to take out the world's smartest man, he picks up a remote control. And he says, "What's that? Another ultimate weapon?" And he goes, "Yeah, in a way." And he turns on all the television sets behind him. There's literally hundreds of television sets. And on these television sets, man had united. The Russians had stopped whatever they were going to do against the Americans. The Americans had stopped against whatever they were going to do to the Russians. Chinese, everyone united under the fear of a higher authority. That this benevolent being could at any point take out mankind. And because of this belief, these savage beings, these debtors by nature, had a common enemy to unite behind. The message is to bring peace in the public, a giant lie from the private side, which created the sense of the higher authority. See, man has been praying to man's creations, idolatry. We look to man's law as the ultimate authority, and that's what created the situation in the movie. Was looking to man's law as the ultimate authority had put people in the perspective of there is no authority outside man's law. As soon as the world was under the realization that there was a higher authority and that they were going to look to that higher authority, peace among these savages was the result. So, that's just my interpretation of the movie. To me, it's a profound film because that's the message I got from it. Was that if we continue to idolatrize, I don't know if that's a word, to pray to the false god, whether it's the god of money, god of commerce, your government authority, as long as you put your creation in authority over you, you are a slave to your own creation. How can I prove anything about what we say about contract? I can't, because it's up to you. Are you a slave? Who's your authority? If man's your authority, then you're a slave. I can't prove that everything operates under contract with you, that it's all by agreement, because by your very experience, by your very belief system, you exist under man's authority, and that's the ultimate authority. And so you'll never be free. It will never be a reality for you for things to be of a contractual or an agreement or that nature, because you give your power to the idol. What happened when the Israelites prayed to the golden calf? Well, and death. Wasn't death ordered? And what's an interesting parallel that we've drawn in the creation of our fictional world? Aren't those decedents? Aren't our quote-unquote straw men or corporations dead things? Why do they exist? By virtue of the past. So as long as you believe that you're that name, as long as you believe that I'm Brandon Adams, you're basing everything and all your interpretations on the past. A creditor, a true creditor, would operate from the now. That's why you're not the title. When confronted with a conflict that the title that they think is you created, or by their experience created, right? So you created some kind of conflict by someone's experience of your actions. Your conduct, they see as a conflict was created. So, the moment you put yourself in that ego, that is me, that they are actually personally attacking me, I take it personally, I've made myself the person, I've identified myself. What is identification? Making the same. So they come to me and say, Brandon Adams did this. They want to make me the same as some past experience that they've had of me. Whether it was my words on audio, my words in person, my actions, my conduct in the past. If I am not that, I'm not the same Brandon I was 5 seconds ago. If I'm under the living law, that is only in the now. There is a now time jurisdiction, I'll call it. That's what I would call jurisdiction X. You exist there. That's the only place you actually exist, because you're always coming from the I this, I that, I and the Father are one. That oneness, that wholeness from which we come from, that's the only reality that's happening in the now. As soon as we acknowledge that there is no separation, because it is that separation that creates the idea of basing things on the past. If I were to base what I know of you on your past, I've created a fiction. Al is that. That's what Al is. That's who Al is. Because I say so, and that's my experience of Al. Is that what Al is now? Are your actions in the past what you are now? So at one point, someone gave you a name. Why did they do that? So that they can identify you from past to future. So that they can have transactions with you. But transactions are always taking from the past or putting into the future. Every contract involves past and future. Right? Isn't there some performance to be done? Aren't we basing the parties of the contract on some form of identification? I've made you the same as a name. I'm going to put that name on a piece of paper, or not. Doesn't even have to be on a piece of paper. But by your conduct in our interaction, we're creating the idea of some kind of agreement, some kind of performance-based something, whether implied in fact or expressed or implied in law. There is a condition precedent that's creating from the past into the future. It's always fiction. When you're in the living now, you're never the title. That's why God never has a name, at least in Western religion. It's because he does not exist in the past. He does not exist in the future. It is the omniscient, omnipresent now. Everything stems from the now. Your idea of the past comes from the now. You may think of thoughts and you may recollect to your past, but it only exists in the now. Now, in being creditors, something that I see that agreement, let's say we agree as a community to the Ten Commandments. Are the Ten Commandments created for self-preservation or for preservation of the community? Of the community, right? Like in reality, I can exist without following any of those laws. But if I want to preserve the community, I need to look outside of myself. Because if your focus is self-preservation, then your actions come from a selfish place, and you're going to create that disorder, disruption, those debtor mentalities, behaviors, and actions that give us the world we have. So the paradigm shift is, can we step outside of that? Do we need monetarism? Do we need to base our communities on money? No. Is it possible to exist without it? But what would it require? For us to exist without money, what would it require?
Some valuable means of exchange.
A valuable means of exchange. You think that's a necessity? What does valuable means of exchange create?
Commerce.
Incentive, doesn't it? I will do something if I get something in return. Is that about self-preservation or community preservation?
Self-preservation.
Self-preservation. What if we all stepped up to be creditors to create something that provided for everyone? That the focus was not on a monetarism system whereby you get something for doing something because we need to incentivize you because you're so self-centered that you won't take any action to build your community or help your community unless we put some kind of incentive in it. Or we come together to create a system whereby our primary focus is on distribution of the needs of our fellow man, the harnessing and distribution of those things which we find necessary for existence or those things which we want. Couldn't we come to some kind of agreement as creditors to create something that doesn't require any incentive because we're all taking the role of being responsible, creating something for our community? So, if God's law is the now-time law, the living law under which we conduct our lives, and it is an offer, they are commandments, orders under an authority which we granted and conveyed. What can we do with offers? We can argue. We can accept it. Okay, so if we accept it, and there is now an implied in fact contract, is there performance involved? What happens if we fail to perform? Are there conditions and consequences for our failure to perform on that contract? Could there be a deterioration of our society? Is it possible that the deterioration of society that we're currently witnessing is a result of our own dishonor with our own laws that we created? The living law, that which focuses on preservation of the community, not preservation of the self. An interesting collection, I'll say, of what are called laws. And I'm going to put this in the subcategory of man's interpretation of natural law. This is what I would also classify as esoteric spiritualism. You may believe it, you may not. It's someone's interpretation of something. They're known as the 12 universal laws. And it's interesting because you can also draw some similarities between these and what we consider God's law or the covenant of Western religion. Law number 1, the law of divine oneness. What is the number 1 commandment? Thou shalt have no God before me. There is only the one. And when I am in the I and in the now time, I and the Father are one. As soon as I separate and fictionalize and believe myself to be that separated fiction, I am no longer at one with the all. See, the acknowledgement that everyone you come across in any transaction is an expression of you. If you acknowledge that, it's very easy to step into, let's bring a solution. Because no matter what they want to throw at you, no matter what allegations, no matter what complaints, no matter what they want to say or do, you're going to acknowledge them for their position and seek a remedy. Or you could take it personal, fight, argue the facts. And where might that lead? Okay. Law number 2, and that law of the divine oneness may be interpreted as there is a connection, something that unites us all, whether you believe it or not. Your experience is your only reality. How many have ever been in a car? How many have ever driven a stick shift? I got a stick shift on a hill at a stoplight. Okay? And you got your foot on the brake, right? Hold on. And so your foot's on the brake, but you're kind of, not really present to what's going on outside of the vehicle. You're kind of, doing something inside the car, fidgeting with the radio, maybe where's my cell phone kind of thing. But you're not completely present to the actual vehicle and what's going on just outside the vehicle. Now the guy next to you on this slope, he has an automatic. Okay? And it's got enough torque and enough, what do we call that when it's in, I forget the word. The rotational rate when you're not hitting the gas? Idling. It's got enough of an idle and enough torque that when he pulls his foot off the brake, it starts to roll up the hill. Okay? Now, I'm not really paying attention, but out of the corner of my eye, all of a sudden I see this guy going up. That perception, literally, and I've felt this, I don't know how many of you have felt this, it created the feeling of me moving backwards. And I slam on the brake. I literally, my body was tricked by what I caught out of the corner of my eye. The reality was I was rolling backwards. For that moment, that was the truth.
Car washes do that to you too.
For just that one moment, it was true. And then my rational mind kicks in because my foot's on the brake. Clearly I'm not moving, but this guy's still rolling forward. I'm like, okay, all of a sudden I've got my bearings, lights, lines. I realize I'm not moving, he is. So the rational mind automatically kicks in. That feeling of actually going backwards goes away. But you can see how your perception, your experience can create a truth that isn't necessarily the truth. Remember Obi-Wan and Luke in The Empire Strikes Back? Luke confronts Obi-Wan. This is in The Return of the Jedi. Luke confronts Obi-Wan. Dude, you lied. You said Vader killed my dad, and I come to find out he is my dad? What gives, Jedi? Thought you guys didn't lie. Right? Well, that's my interpretation of what happened in the movie. That's not the actual dialogue. Paraphrasing. So Obi-Wan starts to tell Luke the story, when I met your father, he's a powerful Jedi, blah, blah, blah. And then at some point, he was seduced by the dark side, and he became a completely different person. So what I told you was true from a certain point of view. Luke looks at him, a certain point of view? Like, what the hell is that supposed to mean? You just make up truths whenever you want, Obi-Wan? And Obi-Wan was onto something. He was saying, hey, many of the things that you think are true, it's just a result of your point of view. You make up. So you can make up that I'm the bad guy, that you're a victim to me. You can make that up all day long. You can make up that George Bush is the bad guy, that you're all a victim to George Bush or Obama or any politician. You can all be victims to him. You can be victims to the bank. And from a certain point of view or your point of view, that experience, it is the truth. And there is no changing it until you've shifted out of it and created another reality. Okay, law number 2. The law of vibration. We got adolescents in here, jeez. Okay, law of vibration. Is it possible that all things vibrate? Are you okay?
Maybe look at her first.
Okay? So, thoughts. Has anyone ever seen the little experiment you do in physics where you take one bell and it's an identical bell is sitting next to it, and you ring the first bell and the second bell starts to oscillate with the first bell? Okay? The reason is because those two things, by their structure, their volume, their mass, everything about them, they're harmonically synced. They vibrate together even when they're not vibrating. Before I strike the bell, these things by their very nature have an attunement to each other, such that when I strike the one, the other one automatically starts to oscillate with it. Now, let's look at when I get confronted and somebody comes to me and they're hot and they're angry and they're in my face with the finger. If I start to get defensive because I've associated myself with the past thing that they've got a problem with, and now I'm starting to take everything that they're saying personal, I am now vibrating, oscillating. I'm getting into their state of mind. They're bringing me down to their level. Is it possible to allow it to deflect, to not take a position, to literally keep calm, ask questions, and completely transform the person that you're having this interaction with? Has anyone ever experienced that? By merely your actions and words to somebody else's approaching you, create a completely different attitude, a completely different come from. They go from being extremely pissed off and angry and in your face and hot and to chilled out. Is it possible?
Yes.
Anyone ever witnessed it? Okay. So that may be what we would equate to the law of vibration, is that there are elements all around you. The banking system has a vibration, and your resistance to that system creates the harmonic interchange between you and that thing. That which you distinguish as being different than you has a vibrational rate, and however you choose to relate to it, the reactions you take to it, the position you take with it, is going to determine where you're at. You have a question?
I was just going to comment. There was an experiment that was done on the White House lawn with people that meditated, and during that time it brought a high vibration up where there was no crimes committed in D.C.
Yeah, totally possible. And I've heard of people doing experiments where everyone focused on it raining in one spot at one time, and all of a sudden it starts raining.
Flooding. They overdo it sometimes.
Yeah, if you have too many people focus on it. Alrighty, law number 3, the law of action. So here we are. We talk about lots of neat principles and concepts. How do we get to manifestation? Only through action. It is action, taking your beliefs, your principles, your ideas, your concepts, and the practical application of these things. So we have the concept, we have the idea of being a creditor, how we can create peace, how we can create solutions in our way of being. So now it's up to us to literally step into and take action based on those principles. You've heard me say here many times, where's the best place to practice this? At home, with your family, with your friends, being the creditor. Because if you can't do it with those people, the people you love, just wait until somebody gets in your face that you don't love so much. Okay? So in reality, that's the place to do it. Because once you can do it there, once you've perfected the action of being a creditor with the people you love and the people who are close to you, That's when it becomes an effective tool that you can use with anyone. Because in reality, more times than not, how we react with the people who are close to us is usually more extreme. Because we really don't give a shit what they think about us. Right? Whereas if I'm in public, I'm in a setting where there's maybe several hundred people, I'm not going to react quite like I would with just me and my partner in the house, where there's no one for me to concern about what they're going to think of me in the future, whereas maybe in a setting like this, I'm concerned, what are they going to think of me? Right? So I'm going to take maybe some different action. I might not react the same way. So in reality, it may be a good practice to perfect your relationships that you have at the personal level. Close relatives, close friends, co-workers. Once you can perfect being a creditor with them, it's easy with the public people. Law of correspondence. Law of correspondence. I would say that's something like as above, so below. That what I create here in the world of commerce is a reflection of what happens in my spiritual plane, or what is happening in my spiritual plane is going to manifest into commerce, into the public. So, why do we have war in the world? Because there's war inside of us. We're constantly conducting war with ourselves more than anything, but a lot with the people who are close to us, our friends, our family, co-workers, strangers. I watch strangers go to war over parking spots. You know, they'll go right to war, fighting, arguing, yelling, screaming. I mean, some even extreme. I've seen people ram their car into somebody else's car because they took a parking spot. Really?
Flattening tires.
Yeah, flattening tires, taking out your aggressions on their physical property. I remember when I was in high school, some girls toilet papered our house. And me, my brother, and a group of our friends, we struck back with a vengeance. And it was just it was our natural, the natural tendency was to go to war. It was ingrained in us. Of course we're going to strike back. Of course we're going to make it 10 times worse than what you did. We laughed at what they did. It took us 5 minutes to clean it up. Oh no, we weren't going to create something that they were going to be able to clean up in 5 minutes. In fact, one girl, we made her clean it up 3 times. Her family was out there 1 o'clock in the morning cleaning up. We watched. As soon as they went back in the house, we came back, did it again. Okay? And then again, yeah, we actually did it 3 times that night. Yeah, but it was warfare. It was a natural tendency to go to war. It was just, it's the reaction. See, until we can step into being conscious of what somebody is doing is not necessarily has anything to do with me. It has everything to do with them. Their experience of me, how can I control that? I can't. I cannot control your experience of me. You're just going to have it. It's just going to be the way that you choose it to be. But I can't control it. So to take it personally, to go to war, to argue the facts, in any case, that's taking a position. That's making statements, right? Why is it so powerful to ask questions? Because we're sitting in the possibility, the potential that maybe they're right. Maybe I'm a total spaz. Maybe maybe I am victimizing the world. And that's everyone's experience of me. He's just a dick. He just hurts everybody, right? I mean, if enough people get together and agree, then, you might want to check it out. There may be some truth to it. Okay? If everybody's like, oh yeah, that guy's a serious asshole. If one guy says it, you're like, oh, okay, well, maybe not. But if the entire room is all, yep, you're an asshole, then you might want to, check. And check in with yourself, if nothing else. You don't necessarily have to agree with them. You don't have to take it personally. What great feedback. Everyone thinks I'm an asshole. Maybe something for me to look at. Or maybe I'm okay with it. I don't give a shit if they think I'm an asshole. I'm good with that. I'm okay with that. right? Like, here's a great example, a relationship between a parent and a child. The parent has to pretty much take the position that I don't give a shit what you think, because if I do, then I can't be an effective parent. If I'm constantly trying to be nice and, be your friend, and I'm concerned about how you're going to react to the things I say, I can't be an effective parent. Sometimes I got to put my foot down. Right? put your foot up. Well, here, this is a perfect segue. The law of cause and effect. Law of cause and effect. What is that? Is that like we reap what we sow? That which we're putting into the world is going to be what we get back. If we're complaining, arguing, fighting, blaming, are people going to fight with us, blame us, argue with us?
Yep, you're attracting it.
You're attracting it, right? So, physics, for every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction. So everything you do is going to be mirrored right back at you. So you can fight with your reflection all day long. It will fight back. Next, I like this one. The law of compensation. This affects those of you who believe in valuable consideration for your efforts. What valuable consideration are you putting into the world? Because the valuable consideration that you're putting into the world is going to be what comes back to you, what's going to be reflected back at you. Remember, we took a look at the banking system and we saw it as something that has that law built into it. Whatever energy I put into the banking system is the energy I can claim right back out of the banking system. Right? The law of compensation. How can it not work that way? Right? We talk about contract. Doesn't there have to be, what are the elements of a contract? We got to have meeting of the minds, right? We got to have intent, obligation, consideration. If there's no flow of consideration, there's no contract. There's no agreement. There's always a back and forth. The law of attraction. And this kind of ties in, it's very similar to law of correspondence, but the law of attraction. So, I want love in my life. What should I probably do? Love, you think? Yeah. What if I want hate in my life? What's a good thing for me to do? Hate? Yeah, huh? If I want fighting and warfare, I could go to war, fight with people. It'll automatically create it in my life. So, if we want to create a community that's responsible, maybe we should take responsibility. Lead by example. Because that which we are, that what we're being, is going to manifest itself in those things around us. It's interesting. I forget, I want to say it was the guy who wrote, is it the seven somethings of success? No, it wasn't Deepak Chopra. Is it Deepak Chopra?
Yeah.
7 spiritual laws of success? Okay, maybe I'm thinking of something else. It's 7 something else's. 7 habits of successful people? Is that 7? Okay. Dwayne Dyer. Okay. Stephen Covey, that's it. Covey. No, not Kobe Bryant. Stephen Covey. And one of the things in there, I believe, and I may be confusing this with a completely different book, but one of the things in there is like, you want to be successful, hang out with successful people. Surround yourself with effective, productive, positive people. If there's an irretrievable debtor in your life, or debtors, plural, and you surround yourself with these people all the time, well, guess what? You're vibrating with them. You're taking on their habits. You're taking on their behaviors. You're taking on their thought patterns. You're taking on their judgments. It's very difficult to create or to effectively create or affect transformation and change when you surround yourself with people who are committed to something completely different.
Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow
Oh, that's it, Napoleon Hill.
Think and
Think and Grow Rich. Yep.
Number one.
I knew somebody would get it. I'm not good with quotes. Okay. Yeah, where's Gordon? He's got it memorized, I'm sure.
Fred, give us a quote.
Fred, you got it? Okay, law number 8. Law of perpetual transmutation of energy. Wow.
Words are getting harder to spell.
Transmutation of energy. So, here we have in our existence a world which, is it possible for us to actually change the world?
Yes, it is.
In fact, is it ever not changing? Is this a dynamic existence or a static one?
Dynamic.
So if it's ever changing, we're either going up or we're going down. But where we're at and where we choose to put our focus and attention could probably shift the direction. So many people, because they're trapped in the fictional world and they're worried about the future and they're basing the future on the past, they see in their eye and in their vision, shit's going to hit the fan. Things are going to be bad, right? They've made a judgment. They've made a prediction that it's going to be bad. The economy's going to fail, and they make up that that's bad. That things are going to happen. The war, destruction. The end of the world, 2012. Watch out. You're all going to get it. Okay? So that's what we make up. And so we live right into that. We create it. Because we're basing our lives on the past and the future. We're not in the now. Because what can I do now? Not, oh my God, this is the past, and oh my God, this is the future. I'm paralyzed in the present. Right? Isn't that what is created? That's often created. A paralysis in the now. I'm concerned about the future. I'm concerned about the past. So I've created paralysis in the now. Kind of stuck in a rut. Paralysis analysis. Law number 9, law of relativity. I love law of relativity. So, you say that the collapse of the economy is bad. Is that true?
No.
Some people it is. Other people it's not. What do we call that?
What is?
Relativity. You make up your interpretation of any series of events is just your interpretation of any series of events. You know, somebody else's interpretation of those same events, it ain't the same. So everything is relative. My experience of something is going to determine my reality of something, but it is a completely different reality for someone else. Right? Actually, Einstein came up with this. They call it the theory of relativity. Really, it's a theory. So, how fast are we currently moving in this room? Seemingly from our experience, we're not. We're just standing still and stagnant, but in reality, the Earth's spinning on its axis, the Earth's moving around the sun's moving through the galaxy, so we're moving at like 186,000 miles per second. Right? But that's from relativity. If we were to pull ourselves far away enough from this galaxy, it would seem like a pinwheel. And it's just moving. Things are cruising, but the people standing here are like, I'm not feeling it. Right? The reality is, it don't feel like we're moving at 180-something thousand miles per second. It feels like we're not. So, relativity. Inside and outside of a situation. So whenever and this is a good point to be made in your interactions on a commercial level, you got to step outside of the interpretation that's going on. Don't make up that whatever somebody's confronting you with is true or fact or anything else, but don't take it personally. Don't react to it. We can be very effective when we don't react. Okay, that was 9. I think I could get through these in 2 minutes? Maybe, yeah. Law of polarity, easy, bad, good, we create it, right? If I make up, for instance, we have debtors. So what does that automatically create? Creditors, right? We have dark, therefore we have light. There's always going to be a polarity. Whenever you take a position, you're automatically creating the opposite, without a doubt.
Instead of being neutral.
Right, or instead of coming from infinite possibility. You take a position, you're creating a counter position, or if somebody's got a counter position, you take a position, right? Always opposite. 1 minute. Yeah, 11 and 12, law of rhythm, law of gender, law of rhythm. Everything's in seasons and in cycles, right? We have to transcend. Like we know it's going to be cold in the winter. We can transcend the fact by maybe having blankets and heating in our homes. So we can transcend the fact that the economic cycle goes like this. Economic system goes up and down just like any other cycle. We need to transcend it, not to be a victim to it. And law of gender, learn balance. The masculine and the feminine energies and how we can balance those in our lives. The nurturing versus the doing. How can we bring balance in our lives? Let's change the tape real quick. We're not going to actually take a break tonight. I'm just going to get through all this so that we can finish up early so I can get everything packed up. You guys can have your little mingle session afterwards.